All right. I appreciate everyone who is joining with us live today, and thank you to all of you who are watching this recording after the fact. We look forward to connecting with everyone afterwards, hopefully on some individual calls, but this should be a good starting point. So, do a couple quick intros on the Uptick side before we jump in. My name's Corey Ashline. I've been with Uptick for only about a month now, still pretty new with the company, but excited to be here, be your main point of contact for any inquiries you have about Uptick. And then I will loop in others, such as James, who you meet here in just a minute for some of the demos and technical presentations. But that's all you need to know about me. James, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Hi, everyone. I'm James Hallisey. I lead our solutions engineering group here at Uptick. Been at Uptick for around 3 years and come with an extensive background in non-bank and fintech lending space. Thank you, Corey.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Thanks, James. Jay or Goggin, and you guys want to do a quick intro of yourselves?
Goggin, feel free if you want, real quick.
Thank you so much. Corey, this is Gagandeep Grover, been with Uptick close to a year now. I handle parts of client implementations and client relationships and expansion within Uptick. And I've had about 2 decades of equipment finance and leasing experience across various companies in multiple geographies. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Goggin. Jay Richardson here. I lead our non-bank vertical here at Uptick. I joined the team last year. Definitely a exciting company to be a part of. Been in this space for about 15 years in totality now. So as you've heard, you've got a lot of experience specific to this industry. So you certainly utilize us as you go forward for additional resources. But thanks for everybody for joining.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. We'll go through just a couple quick few slides here, like I mentioned, and then we'll jump right into the demo and get into the meat of everything. I know that's what everyone really wants to focus on. So, um, here at Uptick, what we're going to show today is a couple different things. But first, just a little bit of background on what Uptick is and who we are as a company. So, one of the problems that we're trying to address with the platform which we've built, which I'll go over in just a minute, is a lot of the manual work that folks are still doing, even at these equipment finance companies or any lenders that have already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, on systems and software, whether it's the front end or the back end. There's still a lot of manual work being done, and a lot of that is no longer necessary with tools or platforms like Uptick. So, for example, you'll see a few of the bullet points here that we have called out. You see, there's still a lot of humans performing those manual tasks, which means anytime you want to grow the company, it's going to require hiring more, and that's just not the way that things have to be anymore. A couple examples, call out examples here, working on the front end for origination and underwriting on small and mid-ticket size deals still takes 45, 60 plus minutes. And that's actually being quite generous. A lot of the time, it's more like a few hours to get those deals approved. Large ticket deals is more like days, if not weeks, of lots of manual work that folks have to go through, whether it's data gathering, building credit packages, and so forth. Risk and compliance are unfortunately kind of an after the fact thought when it comes to a lot of that. And so a lot of the internal operations folks, or even on the sales side, they're still spending way too much time on those manual tasks, and they get burned out with what we call swivel chair integration, meaning basically they're keying data into one system, maybe swiveling around and keying it in from one system into another. And again, those are the types of issues that we're able to solve. And so again, these systems are, everyone has all the systems, but what they don't have is the intelligence within or between those systems. And that's where Uptick comes in. You can think of us as kind of like the intelligent layer or AI orchestration layer that sits on top of and in between the existing systems that you have. So that's where it comes in. That's where we'll get a little bit more into the actual platform here. The key thing to remember about the platform, or to understand about the platform, Uptick as a whole, is that there's a number of different things that you can do with the platform across the full life cycle of a lease or a loan, from all the way from origination side all the way to the back end servicing, collections, and so forth. So we're going to focus today just on the origination suite of agents, which I'll get into a little bit more in just a minute. But keep in mind that what we're showing you today is just one example of what the platform can do among tens of hundreds, if not more, of agentic workflows that can be built out within the platform. So this is the origination suite, and this is what James is going to show in just a few minutes here. A couple call outs on this. The idea of the origination suite is to solve that problem that I just called out a few minutes ago around origination, um, and doing the research, the application intake, creating credit memos, spreading financials if you need to, putting together basically your underwriting package for your underwriting team to focus on, whether that's a sales team doing that work, credit analysts, or the underwriters themselves. Regardless, it takes a lot of time and a lot of manual work. So that's what we have, a document intake agent and an underwriting agent to help with. And so the combination of those two agents and a few others kind of built within behind the scenes are what make up our origination suite, with the idea of taking that from 60 plus minutes, if not, far more than that, down to just a couple of minutes. So you can see through the doc intake agent, we do a handful of different things, but really it's going to process the incoming application. It's going to do some identity verification checks. It will automatically parse out that data either into the Uptick system or directly into your existing CRM or LOS, whatever is desired. It'll categorize it, validate each file, and make sure everything is basically in order before it ever even reaches a human review. And then from there, the underwriting agent is going to take it a few steps further. It's going to actually extract and spread some of the financials, the bank statements. It's going to conduct all of your know your business and know your customer research. It can flag specific things that are important to your company, to your underwriting team, to surface those any surface any risks that could be involved with that borrower. And it's basically going to create a full credit memo that again packages everything together for your underwriters. And the goal with again all of this is to reduce all of that manual work, all that manual analysis, so that the folks at the company and the underwriting team can focus on making the critical decisions and not doing the busy work to get all the data and information together. Last thing I want to call out here before we jump into the platform is it's very important to understand that Uptick is not a system that would replace anything you currently have. If you have a CRM or an LOS or a CMS on the back end, maybe a GL, could be any systems you have. Uptick is designed to sit on top of those systems and work in tandem with them, not replace them. So you can continue to use your existing systems that you have in place. Nothing changes there. All we are going to do is we are going to help you automate some of those workflows, some of those manual workflows. You can continue to use your existing credit process, your committee, all of that decisioning can stay the exact same. We're just going to help you get there more efficiently. And the last one I want to call out that's very important is that data security is a big one for everyone, and we fully understand that. And it's a big topic of discussion these days, as it should be. And so the data that is within your system, while it may be being processed through our agentic workflows, we don't keep that data. We don't have to sit on it. It can stay entirely within your systems, within your domain. And the actual uptick as a company does not have to have access to that data. So that's something very important to remember as we go forward here. So those are just a few slides I wanted to show. There's a lot more discussion that we can have, and we can have some of that maybe after the demo if any questions come up. We're also happy to jump on individual calls because with a system like this, we're like I said, we're going to show the origination suite and a few of those agents. But with a system like this, it can do so many different things. It's unique to the individual pain points that you have as a business. Everyone does business differently, and we understand that. So this system provides flexibility. So we'd love to jump on individual calls with folks to talk through the way that you do business, the challenges, and some of the friction points that you're focused on. But for today, we'll show that origination suite as an example, and that'll be a good starting point. So again, if there's any questions that come about, please drop those in the chat. We'll address those afterwards. But for now, we'll go ahead and jump into the system, and I will hand it over to you, James.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Corey. All right. So you all should be seeing my screen now. As Corey alluded to, I'm going to show you some of our origination suite. First, you're going to see our intake agent in practice, helps the facilitation of actually bringing in the loan application. And then in the back end, I'm going to show you our underwriting agent. As Corey pointed out, does a series of traditional underwriting tasks on your behalf to help with that processing. Ultimately, each of the agents you're going to see are going to be in this UX and view that we've created to show their actions. However, these are modular agents. They can be deployed and shipped into existing systems and or used on their own as required. With that though, let me kick this off. So I'm in the system here as if I were submitting a loan to you, a lending institution. So I could be a broker, a third party, the business itself. However, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let's say I'm Corey Ash. Let's just use Corey A at mailinator.com. And I'm looking to get a titled piece of equipment finance for this person. So I'm going to go ahead and start off that application. The way that this is built out, I have a couple different options. One, if I chose to do a manual application, this is going to be a digital form, what you might be used to. All the boxes you would need about the loan filled in by typing in that information. However, what we found to be very valuable and where our agent comes into place pretty significantly is the ability to take the doc package, to take the context of the application and do that on your behalf. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this button for this document dump. I'll go into my documents. I have a series of information here. So I have a general credit application with some overview information about the application. I have an ID, couple bank statements, and then ultimately a invoice for equipment that we'll be purchasing. So I'm going to take all of these documents and I'm going to upload them. And that is what kicks off our original intake agent. So what the intake agent is doing is a few different things. You actually see this spinning here. That means it is in action. So the first thing that's happening here is Uptick's document AI is actually verifying and classifying each of these documents. What are they associated with? What are they ultimately filling for us to complete this application? Once that is done, ultimately it is going to begin the extraction process. So we are taking this information, like the ID, to fill out the personal information, to use it to run necessary credit checks as a part of the application, using the bank statements to work on the financial analysis, the invoice to figure out what's the actual value we're going to use. So all of that is happening in the background. No one's keying in information into alternative systems. No one's looking at having to swivel chair into other outside sources. The agent is doing that on our behalf. As the example here, you'll see our ID. It's been verified. We can see this is in fact an ID. It has been uploaded and it has been verified and extracted. With that, I'm going to move forward to the actual application itself. So you'll see here all of that information that has been provided across these documents has been appropriately extracted and has filled in each of the pieces that you see here. So I have my business information. I have information about the guarantor that was uploaded. Let me add in some basic items. So you'll see if that is not on the documentation, it will remain open so that the human in the loop can make any kind of adjustments that may be necessary through this process. My last part here is any equipment information. So if I would like to add specifics about any of the equipment that is being processed, I can make that choices and I can add in any of that data in order to move forward. Prior to submitting, we've built in a workflow that allows you to present any kind of necessary authorizations that might be required and or disclosures, as well as a summary view of all the information to move forward. So once I've checked off this information, everything looks right. I've given my disclosures. I'm going to go ahead and submit this for review. So that entire process that traditionally could take a couple emails back and forth, resources to key in that particular data is all done through the agent. in a matter of seconds while we were speaking. With that submission, it actually kicks off the next process. So, in a multi agent orchestration throughout this equipment financing process, we now move into what is the document analysis, and ultimately the credit agent comes into play. So, with that, I'm going to move on to the back end, and you can actually see what's happened from the agent on the underwriting side. So I have my view here. I'm now looking as if I am a credit analyst at the lender. I've just been assigned FHH star that it's been submitted by one of my partners, and I now have to review the information. You can see here in this overview section, the AI has actually contextualized all that information and has written a summary. So what are the highlights of this application? What kind of risks are here? What information would I need to use in order to actually move forward with getting this to approval? And then any critical findings. As the analyst, here's some things I'm probably going to want to check off, manually view before I actually move forward. I'm also going again to get that overview of the information and then a quick risk assessment. How does this business look financially? We've actually gone out and looked at some of the third-party sources to give me verifications. And then from a financial overview standpoint, where are we seeing from a very high level? So this is where I get that context of the application. We've heard this from our clients. That's very important that we're capturing the full picture from our conversations, from sources, from information that's passed on appropriately throughout the chain prior to funding. So this helps ultimately facilitate that process. Then the next thing here that I want to show you are some of the third-party information that's been gathered through the agent as a part of this process. So our first thing here is our KYC, KYB checks. So through Uptick's direct connections, we have a series of 100 plus connections in the financial services industry, particularly these important ones like searches like KYB, KYC, where we can automatically run this information and let you know the business rules behind what it's returned. We can also use public source information. In this case, FHA Star is a trucking business, so I have some safer data that I'm able to pull in and use as a part of this application. The next phase here is the document analysis. You saw some of that in practice with the upload, where we're able to actually verify the information against the required documents. But there's two other important aspects here that are happening. One, if I need to collect this information, as an example, I need a voided check. I can click on this and I can send an email directly to the client. I don't need to go to a different system in order to facilitate that. The agent is going to go ahead and send an email and say, FHA Star, please send over your voided check so we can verify the account for funding. You don't have to manually do that. It's happening on your behalf. The other thing that it's doing is running the analysis verification on these documents. Are the applicant information meeting up? Do the dates of the documents that I asked for look correct? Is there any kind of highlights in the information that I might want to double check if I needed to ask for a new document? So that, again, that process that is very time consuming, that can extend the time to fund, which we know is critically important on these deals, is being facilitated through this agent process. The next phase here that we get into is some of the actual analysis. So I've collected this application, I've collected the documents. I need to critically analyze these from the financial lens. Can I fund this loan? So this is where some of this view comes in, particularly around the bank statement analysis. What we've done at Uptick, using again our document AI, is we've created the ability to actually extract and organize both either connected bank statements or uploaded bank statements like you saw to highlight any of the transactional information we might use to make a decision. So I have my overview information. I have any risk indicators. These can ultimately be customizable, configured to what's important to your lending institution. We've heard from a number of clients that NSFs, returns, gambling are all hot button issues that their team traditionally looks through on the transactions, but we can automatically highlight those things. We're also giving you a breakdown into the trends of the revenues, expenses, general cash flows, what liquidity might look like, and then again, some of those red flags. Do they have MCA daily deposits? Is there a ton of cash withdrawals? All of those line by line figures that you're probably putting into a spreadsheet. Your team's probably looking over, highlighting the agent is doing on your behalf. There's a monthly overview where you can see directly what the activity looks like, as well as at a transaction level, you can see any of the values. If you need to make an adjustment to a value, as an example, if you might not agree with how it's categorized, I can go to the recategorization and I can change what this was for, and then it will ultimately make that adjustment to the category and then ultimately down to the analysis as well. So that is the bank statement analysis. We know in many cases the cash flow underwrites are done on these equipment finance loans, but we've also created financial analysis that will look into profit and loss statements, balance sheets, tax returns, etc. Run your spreads, give you that overview of the information. Contextually to this is also the scoring. So if there's any kind of business or personal credit scores, if you need to look into the UCCs that might be filed on this, again, you're not going to a third-party system. You don't need to manually do this. The system can do it and give you an overview of that data. Once you've ultimately looked across the business, looked across what the collateral might be, and you want to make a decision about this loan, you want to do things with it, you want to see if you should approve it, you want to see where you ultimately might be able to fund this and write up a memo for that process. This is where the credit agent completes that last task base prior to moving to closing. So if I go to my scorecard, this is where you can set the parameters of what is important to you across this business, of how it scores, how it looks across its peers. Is it meeting the financial risk parameters? Does it meet credit risk, etc.? You can set these all exactly how you would like to configure them down to the product specific level. Ultimately, once that's been run, you can even match these to potential funders. So if you yourself aren't the end funder, if you ship these out to other institutions, or even in some cases you participate the loan, you can set up funding parameters. The AI will ultimately look at the criteria of this loan versus the parameters that they traditionally fund and let you know if it passes or fails those parameters. And then you can automatically send this deal along with the complete document package and write up for them to evaluate. Lastly, here, as you're going through this, the AI is looking at any underwriting criteria that you might have. As an example, in here, we have EIN consistency. One thing that folks check, is the EIN consistent across all the documents. You can add as much or as little as you like for the AI to ultimately check. We can also take in your credit policy and give the AI that context to check throughout the process. But your final write-up is ultimately being facilitated as well. So that is the full process from what you saw from the intake portion to what you saw going through an underwriting process. The entire thing is ultimately taken and facilitated through our agent processes. This can have as much human in the loop or as much autonomy as you'd like, but ultimately it drives efficiency, brings satisfaction to your clients, your third-party brokers, and then ultimately your organization to process these loans more effectively. Happy to pass this back to Corey. Anything you'd like to add? And we're more than happy to open this up to any questions to dig into anything deeper.
I appreciate that, James. Thank you for walking through that with everyone. The only thing I'll add, which James had mentioned a couple times, but I think it's good to reiterate, is that everything he showed you is just an example of what the platform can do. It is a solution that you can purchase outright and use as is, but it's also highly configurable to fit your workflows, the type of information that your team needs, the kind of the data you're looking for, and things like that. So those are all reasons why we'd like to talk to folks individually on calls, because as I mentioned earlier, we know everyone does business differently, everyone underwrites differently, everyone looks at different types of deals and different scenarios. And those are all things that we can talk about how that solution can basically be tailored to exactly what you need. So, no other questions right now. I want to thank everyone who's joining us live. Appreciate you taking the time, and also everyone who's watching this after the fact. I'll reach out individually so that we can grab some time to chat a little bit about your needs and how the platform can help, including the solution that James just demoed. So, I want to thank everyone for joining, and we'll talk soon.